talk about the VOD and the silver screen. Kevin and Tom and Joe know all there is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 748, The No Hard Feelings.
A milestone.
A milestone. They're all milestones, except for the milestones.
Right.
That's how that works.
But this is a true milestone.
A true... No, I thought true milestones were like 725.
Oh, okay. The ones
775.
that sound like they're actually...
That sound like they're kind of rounded, but like who really celebrates that? Like that's a mile.
See, I was thinking it went the
milestone.
opposite direction, like a mild stone. So it's like, how much more mild can it get? A true milestone is the most mild of numbers.
So I guess let's go around the table and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Kevin.
This is Tom. We are Joe-less this week, but joining us via the magic of a Zoom tube from Pod to BU, it's Manish. Hey, how's it going?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we will fix that. By the end of this, you will no longer feel that way. That's our promise to you.
Okay.
So I guess before we dig in proper, shameless plugs, don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeart, wherever you find a podcast, you can find us. While you're there, be sure and follow us so you never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. That's always helpful and appreciated. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/real spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. It's called the League of Show Shares because we're hoping you'll share an episode. We had lots of people share episodes.
It was the big one
because it was our big 10th anniversary.
Now
episode.
that's a milestone. If we don't go by numbers of episodes, 10 years. Now
10 years is a milestone.
And Joe didn't even say it. After 10 years, I was waiting for it, and then when I was editing, I go, Joe did not even make a milestone reference. Oh, he blew it. We'll have to wait until 20 years now.
If there's one thing we can count on, it's that we can't count on Joe.
Well, there you go.
So people who were kind enough to share an episode last week include librarian Cynthia, Ralph Tribble, Julianne Jordan, Glenn Cougar, Melon Brewer, Chris Valls, Jeff Wildman, Tammy Lynn Powers Betts, Leanne Butisi, Brendan McGuckin, Travis Tewitt, Tom Dowdy, Chris Sanders, Chris Magic Man, Gabriel Lugo, Phil Timon, Jeff Michael, Ron Johnson, Taylor Ward, which I think is a new one, coming in on the 10th anniversary episode, brand new.
Well, I don't sing, so...
So many running gags that poor bastard would not understand.
I'll message Dan for a file.
Okay. Josh Rosen, Heather Sachs, Christopher Rex, NostalgiaCast, Mike and Oscar, Geek to Me Radio, The Film Bee, Colby Mack, David Rojas, In Session Film, Ronnie Castle, Matt Naglia, Brad Hyan, Binge Movies, Feelin' Film, and Ryan Terry. So,
and you mentioned Brad Hyan.
But he wasn't on, so I could.
Oh, I know. He just had a lot to say about his rule. And
yes.
I know you were talking about changing the rule. I guess, did you have a change of heart?
I don't know. I'm still weighing my options.
Okay, yeah. It's good to really think these things through.
I like to leave him in suspense.
Yeah.
So,
perfect.
So anyway, also we have a Patreon, patreon.com/real spoilers, where for $5 a month, you get bonus content, and we like you extra. So,
and over to the box office report, The Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. So it was predicted to, it was tracking, I think, after CinemaCon and all the positive reactions, like 120, 130-ish. And then it was then estimated it would be 70, which was a huge drop. And I think it ended up like 55 million for the opening weekend. And then supposedly it had around a 75% drop second week.
Oof.
And they're already doing buy one, get one free.
Yeah,
tickets.
I've seen so many sales. And Voodoo has sent me like 3 different times things about, you bought this, you get $8 off of a ticket to see The Flash.
Yeah.
So
oops.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get why, of all the movies, I mean, there's been a lot of really the superhero movies that have done great, and I know
Venom.
people. Yeah, I don't get why people would embrace Venom over this. The people who who don't like this movie, I understand their complaints about it, even though I don't share them. But I get it. Like, I'm like, you're not wrong. It just didn't bother me.
Right.
But like, there's been way worse stuff that has done way better.
I think what it really comes down to is James Gunn announcing that things are changing and there's going to be a new slate, a new cinematic universe, basically. And I know it's up in the air of what that means. Is it a hard reboot, a soft reboot, whatever? But I think people see the writing is on the wall, and certainly if it wasn't before, it is now. But they're like, this doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to watch this stuff anymore. I want whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, and I don't think that people know all the details about, Ezra Miller's controversies and all of their legal troubles and whatever. But I think that not having the star being able to go on Hot Ones or on talk shows or doing like red carpet appearances, I feel like that also hurts because it just doesn't sell this movie as like being fun. Like all
That's
I heard
the
about this
circuit
movie
now.
is the
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Hot Ones, right? Like, it's crazy
like that's
to think.
the major one now, and
That
not
is-
being able to do stuff like that, I think it hurts because then it doesn't get people excited about the movie.
And I feel like there's obviously other big, huge name actors in this movie, but I think even they avoided the work in the circuit because they didn't want to get asked questions about Ezra Miller. So like, you couldn't even send out your co-stars or to do the heavy lifting, right? So like, if Ezra Miller had been injured and couldn't make the circuit, then people would go out on their behalf. But in this case, nobody wanted to touch the third rail.
It's tough. This was what a mess, though. Seriously, what a mess. I mean, did you ever imagine there would be a world where we would be getting these Justice League level films that weren't making $1 billion?
Yeah.
Like, this is a Justice League light. You've got Wonder Woman, you've got The Flash, you've got Batman returning after 30 years. This movie has so much.
I don't know that Wonder Woman sells tickets. She's in it for 4 minutes.
Well,
Like, it's
to...
another one of those, like, what does her union contract look like? That she,
right.
Like, I will be in every movie for 4 minutes.
Sure. But I mean, just to qualify that it's a Justice League, like, I mean, you've got the Justice League in this movie. No matter what, it's like the Justice League is on film, and you've got a movie that it can't clear 60 million domestic opening weekend.
Right.
What on earth is that when you've got, Marvel movies making 150, 170?
Yeah.
It just shows you in 10 years how badly DC has screwed this thing up.
I think it's also interesting from the people that, like, when a Marvel movie comes out and underperforms, and they're like, oh, see, nobody cares about these Marvel movies, and then DC's like, hold my beer.
Right.
Right? Like we can do worse. Hang on, let us show you.
But this is like, see, the way that history, I mean, I know that everything gets some kind of revisionist history, but this one especially is going to be like, this opened so poorly, this was a bomb, this was catastrophic. And when we look at this film 5 or 10 years and removed from all the gobbledygook, it's going to be like, yeah, why did this underperform? Like, it is only going to make this one seem better.
Yeah.
Because of how poorly it performed, because it doesn't deserve that bad of a...
It does
opening,
not. Like
right?
I said, there's been much worse movies.
Transformers 4, Transformers 5, like, those movies are terrible. Like, The Flash is way better than those movies, and those make $1 billion. So it's crazy. Right now, in the past,
of course, Optimus Prime didn't go on a 6-state killing spree.
That's true. I mean, he only had that one thing where he transformed with the guy inside him, but it was a mistake, and like, they cleared that up. And so the biggest DC film I think of the past year was Black Adam. Go figure. Yeah,
which was still, and I can't help but feel that maybe this, in the same way that people felt like the last Star Wars movie underperformed because of the one before it.
Yeah.
I do wonder if Black Adam took a toll, because that movie was dog.
Well, also, if you think about it, I mean, that movie had the promise of Henry Cavill coming back.
Yeah.
And then the next movie, right after that came out, they took that away.
Yeah.
So this movie, especially for the fans, because one, you've got the Snyder Cut people that will boycott it, right? And they're the most vocal people online about any movie fandom. And then you have people that are fans of just Henry Cavill, and it's like, oh, he got fired. Then you have people that are like, oh, they destroyed the Rock cinematic universe, I'm not going to go see it. You have so many different things with fandoms and stuff working against this film. And then the people that are, again, like, I don't care about this DCEU.
Well, and then even if you're not necessarily like, I will not go see a movie because you besmirched the career of The Rock, you know what I mean? Like, even if you're not in that camp, there is just this vibe of like, you guys just can't get it together over there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just feels messy. Like I honestly, like, I feel at this point with the DCU, because there have been some good movies that have come out within that world, but looking back, it feels like those were accidental. like they the whole, like, if you give an infinite number of monkeys a typewriter and an infinite
They'll
number,
type out Hamlet. Yeah.
right, yeah, like, it's like, I feel like that's what happened. Like, if you put out enough DC movies over the course of a decade, one or two of them is going to be okay. Like, I mean, because honestly, they're probably if you actually run the numbers, about 10% of their movies have been good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right?
I think it's higher than that.
Maybe 15. But yeah, like, it's,
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I would say it's probably more like 35%, but yeah, it's a low number.
It's a low number
when it should be
Yeah.
much higher with the built-in IP that they have.
And they've been good for different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're good at one thing. It's not like, oh, when they get the action together, it works. Or when they get the story
Right.
together, it works. It's like Shazam was good because it was a body swap comedy, and that was funny.
Yeah.
And then they did it well. But then Wonder Woman was a straight-ahead adventure movie that didn't leer at her the whole time, right? Like oh, that was different. Like, when they work, it's always for different reasons, which
It's
makes
weird.
it feel accidental. But
Yeah.
but
Well, no hard feelings, DC.
yes, that's what you call a segue. After 10 years, you can segue like that.
There
It's
you
just
go.
it's
It's
just second
built in,
nature.
yeah.
So who's synopsisizing this one, since we don't have Joe?
Oh, jeez.
Manish, have at it. He's
Okay.
like, what? What? Why would you? No,
man.
I'm not
You've
trying
got
to throw
Wikipedia,
you-
right?
I'm not trying to throw you in the spot. I was just being a.
I'll go first. I really enjoyed this movie. I miss comedies like this. I think star-driven comedies. Jennifer Lawrence was fantastic in this movie. I thought it was really fun. It played it safe. It wasn't anything new, right? It wasn't reinventing what a romantic comedy or raunchy sex comedy could be, but like, it hit the beats for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really enjoyed it as well. And I really just appreciated that it was like a very by the book, kind of like straightforward, sex comedy, and with, a big movie star at the center, and just like, it was just fun. And I felt that it's definitely I've been missing this kind of movie on the big screen. I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking about how, like, Jennifer Lawrence is pretty much around my age. I think she's like a year or two younger than I am. And I'm like, yeah, I bet she was watching like Wedding Crashers and, Knocked Up when she was, like, in her teens. And like, so having a movie like that out, I'm sure it's like really important to her to like kind of do that kind of role. Cause it's like, I think that's her personality in real life. It's just like
Agreed.
funny and charming and like kind of crazy and stuff. So
Yeah, she's always been like that. This character fits her personality very well.
I think that's a good point, is that she has so much charisma when you see her in interviews, and she's naturally funny.
She's real too.
Yeah.
She doesn't hide who she
Right.
is. She says things that no one else says in interviews.
But you
right?
also, she hasn't really done that on screen, right? Like,
Right.
like, you don't.
She always plays a different character
right.
than herself.
And so it's interesting to see that on screen. Overall, I liked this movie. I liked it less than you guys did, but I felt like there were so many missed opportunities in this movie, and I lay them all at the feet of the director. I feel like this was
Gene Stupnitsky.
Yeah, he directed Good Boys, which I liked a lot.
yeah, I like Good Boys.
And
Which that makes sense, like, when you look at that.
it
He
does.
Wrote Year One, one of your favorites.
I actually like Year One. I'm
Wrote
on record for
Bad
that.
Teacher with Cameron Diaz.
was okay, yeah.
I mean, so he's got the pedigree of that raunchiness, and Good Boys was a huge hit.
Yeah, and this is similar to Good Boys in that it says it's raunchy, but at the end of the day, it's really not.
Well,
right? Like, it's,
I think the reason you can't be as raunchy is because it's just not acceptable
Oh, for
anymore. Is the
sure.
problem,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we don't see movies like this anymore because who were the main characters in all these movies? Guys,
Men, yeah.
And so the only way you can make this movie is by swapping it. And now I know we might catch some flack. I know that's, you know what I
right.
mean? Like,
there were people that were appalled at the premise, which I'm just like, I mean, there are lots of movies with bad I mean, what's Goodfellas?
But this
right,
right.
That's a bad version. Like
we
those are all horrible people, but we love it,
right?
Like,
we romanticize things like that, but then we have problems with other people. But also, these characters in this story are very human and they're flawed, and the movie's examining those flaws.
Right.
The movie never goes, "Hey, everyone should go do this."
This is a great idea.
The whole point of the movie is you're supposed to go, "Oh, like no, this is horrible," and the characters are supposed to grow by the end of it.
In real life, Michael Scott would cost Dunder Mifflin tens of millions of dollars.
He would have been
right.
So why do people watch that show if he's such a horrible player?
Right.
You have to remove yourself from real life when you're talking about movies.
Especially a movie like this. This isn't trying to be a slice of life. This isn't a Noah Baumbach script. Like it's
when you watch Euro Trip or Road Trip, or when you know what I'm saying, when you watch Wedding Crashers, when you watch people doing these things, do you want the lead characters to all get arrested? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're not supposed to think that way. But also, again, people take the wrong message, and I think a lot of these people that badmouth it don't see the movie.
Well, as soon as I saw
definitely true.
As soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, "There's no way they actually have sex."
Right?
It was like that's not what this movie is doing. Like, there's that is not going to be a thing. It's not the message. She's not going to sleep with him, and then he's going to suddenly behave like a 35-year-old and be like, "I now know how to conquer the world. Give me my pipe and velvet jacket."
It was a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's never going to get executed, and it's about the zaniness that goes along the way. But you're right. It's like, so spoilers, they don't do it.
Right.
And it's by design. The whole thing about the growth of these characters, both of them do grow in different ways. Yeah. And the experience, even though it was a terrible idea for these helicopter parents to take out a Craigslist ad saying, "Date in quotes my 19-year-old son and I'll give you a car," but one, this is based on a true story, so people are crazy.
Loosely, like,
but someone put that
they
ad
used a
up.
Craigslist ad to spin out.
I'm sorry,
from their story, but the
premise,
actual incidents are not.
It's not a
Yes,
biopic.
No. Right, it's a jumping off point. Someone just it's like when someone sees a painting and then writes a script based on it. It's But what I mean though is that someone, whether it was a joke or not, I didn't look into the real story, but someone posted that, and as we've seen, especially in recent years, people are crazy. So like you'd say like, "Oh, that would never happen." Okay, it did.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible idea, but again, that's the whole point, is the journey we go on, seeing these characters find out all in their own way. That is a terrible idea.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fun along the way. Like, it's fun and charming. And again, Jennifer Lawrence's character, I just love her.
Performances are great. I think the script is really solid. I think the direction is where this movie gets let down. There were a lot of times when I was like, this is being well executed. On paper, these jokes are funny, but they just weren't landing for me.
You know what? What I noticed is it's very quiet, and a lot of the jokes are undersold. But for some reason, there's something about that I was endearing to me. I liked how it was like.
I normally like an undersold joke, right?
Yeah.
Like that. I think a lot of times good jokes are ruined by people trying to waka it.
Very.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
except for Fozzie Bear.
well,
All
of
his-
course,
I mean,
of course, he's a comedic genius. It goes Fozzie Bear, Groucho Marx,
right.
George Carlin. I think we all know that. But I'm trying to remember in the beginning of this movie, there was a moment where something was going on, where there was like some wacky physical humor, and there was no music of any kind. It was happening in dead silence, and so I was just like, you need something to underscore that we're supposed to be seeing this through a light prism.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. So, like in the very beginning of the movie, her car is getting towed, and you're introduced to the character Maddie, played by Jennifer Lawrence. She's 32 years old, which I think is how old Jennifer Lawrence is. Like, so she's playing
her own age,
Yeah, because the age thing is such a big deal. So, like, just to put in perspective, you have 32-year-old, you have a 19-year-old.
She is
guy.
32.
Okay, so there you go. Her car's getting towed because her mother's passed away and she's inherited a house, but she has to pay property taxes on it, and a bunch of rich people are coming
It's
to
in Montauk, which is rapidly being gentrified.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the property taxes are way up, and the house is paid off. But she's a bartender and an Uber driver. She just doesn't make enough money to pay this huge lump sum.
Yeah.
$22,000 or something is the goal that we end up seeing. Something like that. So her car's getting towed, and Uber is one of her main things. And then she goes to her bartending job, which is like this summer town with all the travelers. They're all coming to do boating, and her bar is on the water. So,
and she's basically got 3 months to make her money.
Yeah,
because it's a summertime.
Yeah, so she's getting screwed over by all this. But we're introduced to the character. We find out that she hooks up with guys and ghosts them. In this small town, the people that live there, tow truck driver, we find out she ghosted him, in a funny situation where she's like, trying to get her car back. Oh, I just was so scared because I was getting too committed or too serious or whatever. And he's like, oh, really? And then this guy comes out and he's like in his little underwear and doing these stretches. And I thought it was I don't know, the physical humor of that was really funny to me.
For me, that played better in the trailer. In the trailer, I thought that scene really worked. And here I'm like, this is all funny on paper, but like, I don't know if the pacing of it was too slow or what was going on.
Again, it was very quiet, but for some reason it sold the awkwardness to me, and I enjoyed how quiet it was. But I think
what worked for me about that scene is like it takes her a comically long time to like realize he's behind her, and so like we're seeing it, and the tow truck guy seeing it while she's like talking about all this, and then like so to me, I kind of like that it was sort of the awkwardness of just like knowing something that she doesn't know, and then like and so I agree that there wasn't a lot of like music to it, but I think in some cases it worked for me because I kind of played up that like cringe comedy awkwardness of like there's really nothing to like soften the awkwardness.
Yeah. And I'm the type of person that I notice those things a lot. Yeah. Like, when the score works, you don't notice it all the time, but it's very effective. When there's a really quiet scene with no score, I usually pick up and go, oh, it's too quiet.
I wonder, this wasn't the scene I was thinking of. Maybe it was I'm trying to remember if there was music when she was like on her rollerblades instead of in a car or something.
I think there was when she was rollerblading.
I'm trying to remember, but it made me think
she was trying to get her car back and like trying to like
that's what it was.
Maybe there wasn't a lot of music there.
That's what it was.
And it was just quiet. Yeah. So you're like, this should be zany, and you're not.
Yeah, because so here's the thing, and I'm going to use a story from someone we're not supposed to talk about anymore, but Woody Allen. Oh. Woody Allen, when he made Take the Money and Run, which I don't know if you're familiar with.
I haven't seen that one, though.
It is hysterical. Like, it's a laugh riot.
Well, if we weren't getting letters before.
Yeah. So it's the first movie that he wrote and directed. Okay. And it's a mockumentary, and he plays a wannabe bank robber who's just comically inept at not just bank robbery, but everything, right? And so there's a scene in the movie where he's getting ready for a date, and he's in this little tiny one-bedroom apartment, and it's been years since I've seen it, but like he's got like one of those like ironing boards that would go up in the wall, and it keeps falling on him, and he's like he keeps his fancy suit in the refrigerator because he doesn't have a closet. Like, it's the only place he can hang it up, and like there's all these things like that. And so he tests this movie, and like people just sit in silence and stare at it, right? They're just like, what? Like, and so Marvin Hamlish is at a test screening, and Marvin Hamlish takes him aside, and he's like, it's your music. He's like, the music isn't telling people that they're allowed to laugh at this. And so all your sight gags are only funny if you know that they're allowed to laugh at it, right? Like, because the things you're showing about this guy out of context are really sad. Yeah. Right? And so he's like, you need to have like this light music that says it's okay to find this funny. This isn't real.
That you know what? That is so, I mean, obviously Hamlish would know, right?
Right.
So like, that's some great advice.
And then Hamlish came on and did the score for this movie. And so
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so I kept thinking of that movie while I was watching this in terms of like a lot of what's going on with her is sad. Right? Like she, like,
it is.
Like she's lost her car, and then, and she's rollerblading instead of driving everywhere and so it's like it wants you to laugh at it, but it's not giving you the cues to say it's okay to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it really shows you the importance of scores in a film, right?
Yeah,
so like,
for sure.
Our friend of the show, David Rosen, Piecing It Together pod, he does scores for film and does music. And what these composers do is, I mean, obviously we know there's so many iconic themes, and talking about Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and Marvel stuff, right? Silvestri and Back to the Future and all that stuff. Like it's so important, but even for little moments, like it's not just the big overarching theme song, it's all these little moments. This film, it's weird because it sits in kind of a place where it feels a little art house, it feels a little A24 or something, because it's quiet and feels right art housey. And so I think they didn't want it to yuck it up, because the tone reminds me kind of a Farrelly Brothers movie.
Yeah.
But it's not big and over the top, but it does have some of the ridiculous humor of something like a Farrelly Brothers movie. So it lives in this in-between space where I think sometimes if you give it too much of a score where you're like, oh, this is goofy, where you want to kind of feel the humanity of the character, and this stuff does suck, and what would drive a person to do something so absurd, so you don't want to like tonally change it with the music. But then again, like if people are like, should I be laughing, or is this, am I feeling
When's the
sorry
last time
for
the Farrelly Brothers have done anything?
Well, they do serious stuff now, right?
Green Book, right?
Right? Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, he did
geez.
Green Book, the Oscar-winning. Yeah. So I mean,
Forgot about that. I forgot that was them.
so I think like Adam McKay, Peter Farrelly, like they're doing the serious stuff.
Gotcha.
So.
Because this I would have loved to have seen this in the hands of the Farrelly Brothers. I think they could have really made this work.
Also, but to play devil's advocate on that for a second, the time that we live in, I think the reason they also didn't want it to go over the top and wanted it to feel a little bit more A24ish, or I'm not saying it's like weird and there's horror elements, but you know what I mean. Like there's been what's the one about what's the Zola or whatever?
Zola, yeah.
So like they don't only do horror, but the Florida Project. This feels a little bit more real.
Magnolia films, something like that.
Yeah, this feels a little bit more lived in and real, but because of the subject matter, and you already know you're going to piss people off, like, oh, she's grooming, which I don't think is accurate. But
he's 19,
right? He's an adult, so
like
he's not underage.
To me, like when people get mad about this, I'm like, well, okay, then what's the age? If 18 is no longer the age where you're an adult, like then at what point are we okay? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's 19 years old, and he's going to Princeton, so he's not dumb.
Well, he's going to Princeton because he has money. Like, let's be clear, he is very dumb.
Well, he's socially
smart, I'm sure.
He's socially dumb. He's not. Yeah. He's not dumb.
Okay, but some of the stuff that he says and does, do make him seem like an idiot. And I think she even says it in some scenes. Like, I do think this kid got into Princeton because of the money and the connections. Like, I think he's not dumb like stoner comedy dumb,
right?
But I do think he is not that intelligent, honestly.
I think what I find really interesting about this movie, and something that I was a little taken aback by when I was watching, because I was expecting kind of a more like, Farrelly Brothers, Wedding Crashers, like Anchorman type movie of just like jokes on jokes. But like, I found what is really surprising and a bit jarring to me is like how like serious and dramatic it can be. And I think when you have, I think Jennifer Lawrence, like she is of course a very talented comedian or comedic actor, but she also comes from, like she won an Oscar 10 years ago, and she does a lot of dramatic movies. And the Hunger Games are also like, I think they're very much more like dramatic.
Those are very serious movies. They're not funny like at all. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like no comedy. So I feel like she is just naturally inclined to a little bit more like hefty material, which is why I think this movie has a lot of serious topics. Like it actually does talk about like consent and parental expectations, and then also gentrification, and I think that it tries to find that balance of being like kind of over the top funny, but then also being really like heartfelt and like dramatic. I don't know if it's always successful, but I think it tries.
Those are great points, Manish. And the other thing that I really feel is important about this movie, yes, it is a raunchy sex comedy, but also this is, we live in a different time where you can't do the traditional sex comedies. But now her taking ownership of her body and been like, I've slept for a lot of people and didn't get a Buick or whatever. You know what I mean? She's like, you're like, it's her body, right? And so like, what would you call it? Like bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
So this movie actually, I think, is very, from a feminist perspective, it's her body. If she chooses, I mean, she hooks up with people all the time, and it's like, why not do this?
The movie has no judgment on that, right?
Right.
Like,
well, that's what I mean.
Like you would see that typically with a male character, he's out scoring.
Yeah.
Right. But this movie isn't like casting aspersions on her.
No, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It's making it like, she hooks up with dudes, whatever.
The movie questions her life choices, but that's not one of them.
No, and that's what I think is a very modern perspective. We don't see that on film a lot. We see it more and more, but this film treats her, it's her choice. And like you said, I mean, for how long? For forever, dudes can hook up as much as they want, right?
Right.
And you had this period of time where it's like, but if a woman did it, she's a slut, which is horrible because
And
it's a total double
by
standard.
that period of time, you mean the entirety of human
That's
history?
that's exactly. It's like, how long? Forever.
Time and more.
This movie, I think, this may be something that goes unnoticed. And, you're going out to see a comedy, but like Manish says, it does get deeper than you would expect. And I think a lot of people, this is going to kind of fly under the radar, is how her and her sex life and how she is treated and not judged for it. I think that actually is really important because we're trying to undo forever in history of the way that people look at those things. And I just like it when she says something like, I've slept with a lot of people and never got a Buick. It's like, why not do this? I can hook up and have fun. And it's like, hey, I need a car, and it's not demeaning sex work. It's sex workers and her choice, her body, her choice.
Right. Real quick, Manish, going back to what you were talking about, Jennifer Lawrence and comedy, don't forget, though, that her first breakout role was on a sitcom. Like,
that's right, Bing Engvall show.
The Bill Engvall
watching that
show, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like,
whatever.
I mean, we can debate on just how funny that
might
or
you
might
meant
not
a
have been.
comedy show. Okay,
but I mean, but the Bill Engvall show ran for what, 4 or 5 seasons on TBS.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, it was
TBS, I think.
Yeah, it was TBS,
TBS
and I mean, it was.
I'm sure that had a big audience.
It was a successful show and had a following that way, because when she became this A-list actress, everybody was like, her? From the Bill Engvall show? Like, and now it's been kind of almost forgotten to time. But initially, like when Winter's Bone?
That's the first time I saw her.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
When that came out, people were like, the girl from the Bill Engvall show is in the, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it was the typical, Robert Pattinson, the guy from Twilight.
Right.
Mr. Mom is going to be Batman. It was that totally playing against.
I think the only reason you didn't hear more of it is because Pattinson did that pivot from a big giant, pop culture phenomenon, where she was on a show that had a following and was successful,
But
and she came into a smaller art house movie.
Yeah.
I think if she had gone
a big one,
if she had gone straight into Katniss, then I think people would have been like, the hell. But because she had Winter's Bone, like, people gave her. They were like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
That was a good movie, and I haven't thought about that in a while, but that was the very first time I saw her. Never knew she was on a sitcom. Yeah, I mean, she took off when she hit the ground running with the dramatic work.
Right.
And obviously is very talented. And like Manish said, she puts her acting chops to use here, but also her comedic chops. Like, this role is the most natural role I've ever seen.
Yeah.
For comedic wise, and her big personality. Like, once she read the script, I think it was like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like, this, and it seemed like she was having fun making it.
And she's a producer on the movie, so I feel like it's something that she feels. I mean, when I've listened to some of her interviews, and she's just like, she seems really passionate about this movie and about this role, and I feel like she's been playing 32-year-olds her entire career, because her work with David O. Russell, like, I think she was always playing like 10 years older than her actual age, and so now to see her like actually that age, and like, she looks, I mean, the way she conducts herself in interviews is so different now, even though she's still the same, like, goofy, funny, kind of crazy, but like, she just has so much more like maturity and like self-assuredness now, and so I'm really excited for this career.
She took a lot of heat from certain parts of the internet for how she behaved in interviews, and because at first people found it cute and endearing, and then it started to seem manufactured or like a shtick, and I'm not saying that it was. I like Jennifer Lawrence.
I always thought it was endearing.
But there were people that thought that she was just putting on a show.
People
I
suck.
just can't imagine being like that, like as famous as she was, like Oscar winner, like star of a hit franchise, like critically, and then being like 22. Like,
It is jaw-dropping when I Google her and I'm like, she's 32? I feel like we've been talking about her for 32
right
years.
When you start that early
Exactly.
and you're playing these big roles and winning the Oscar, you're right, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, she's probably closer to 40 but playing 32.
That
and
was
no
my
offense
thought
to her,
too.
she looks great, but I just mean I thought she's been around for a long time.
I thought she's 38, 39.
Yeah, and so to see that she is 32, and it's like, wow, I mean, she's younger than me.
Especially when you figure you lost a good 3 years of work because of COVID.
And I think she had a baby. That's right. She wasn't acting because she had a kid. Is that?
I mean, she did
have
have
no
a
idea.
kid, and I think she also like took a quote unquote sabbatical, because I think she kind of realized that she was way too much everywhere. I think like Anne Hathaway kind of did the same thing, where it's like, once they become they reach that like backlash point, I think they like kind of take a step back because it's just like it's it's a lot of scrutiny and a lot
It's what
of
The Rock
like,
needs to do.
Honestly,
The Rock needs to do that and then come back with something like a Be Cool. He needs to come back with a good movie where you're like, oh wow, I missed this guy.
I think The Rock's worried though about. I mean, he's no kid.
I know.
I think he's
getting up there.
I think he's afraid that like he's got X amount of time
You're right.
that he can stay looking like that.
I'm just so sick of him.
No, I get
he's
it.
Way oversaturated.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but
you're
he's a
right.
guy that he's a guy we have been talking about for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like I don't know how old he is. He's got to be in his 50s.
Oh,
right?
he's got to be.
Yeah.
He's got to be.
Yeah,
Right?
but he needs to start being like the like father figure mentor type, because like I feel like he'd be good at like kind of playing
He's
a more like
51.
sarcastic, sardonic like mentor type instead of trying to be like the hero.
But you know what? Look
like,
at Stallone and look at, even Harrison Ford's back as Indy, which I'm not trying to say like he shouldn't. But you know what I mean? Now that you've got actors playing up into their 80s action movies.
That's not new.
Really?
John Wayne?
Okay, but I mean,
Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, but
like that's true. That's not new.
But I do feel like with Liam Neeson,
they should all be playing their age. I mean, look at like a Stallone and Creed, right? Like that to me, like that's what The Rock should be kind of gearing towards is like being like the center figure, but also like not trying to be the main guy.
But he doesn't have a franchise that he can fall back on.
Yeah, so I guess Jumanji's the last one now that he can ruin.
I just think he's oversaturated. I used to really like The Rock, and now I'm just sick of seeing him everywhere and pushing all his wares and stuff. And it's like he's trying to recreate the blueprint that Ryan Reynolds planned out, but Ryan Reynolds seems so organic and authentic.
Yeah.
And The Rock is just holding his Zoa energy can in every social media post he does. He's a shill. He comes off as insincere.
And like when Ryan Reynolds is a shill, like he winks at you.
But
like,
he's funny,
I'm being a shill right now.
He's
naturally. He can also take a punch. Yeah, and I feel like The Rock will never take a punch.
That's the other thing is these
and
guys.
And that's the thing that I think annoys me the most about all these like Fast and Furious guys is like your ego is just so big that I just don't. There's just nothing to root for.
They want the Curly Joe clause.
Yeah, it's
in the Three Stooges. That was one of the reasons people can't stand Curly Joe. Is he put it? I think it was either him or Joe Besser. I think it was Curly Joe, but he put in his contract that he couldn't get hit. And they were like, "Well, then, what did you sign up to be one of the Three Stooges for?"
Right?
Like, what like that's the whole thing. That's like hiring Gallagher, but he says he's not going to smash a watermelon, right? Like,
but the key is 100% agree, and the key is with Ryan Reynolds, self-depreciating humor.
Yeah,
he can take a punch, he can make himself look silly or whatever, and that is the key. He's charismatic and charming, but I used to say that about The Rock too. Mm-hmm. But then they got to the point, it's The Rock, it's Vin Diesel, it's now Jason Statham when he's in those movies because he's like, we have to get punched equal times or whatever. It's like, that is not what we want to see. We want to see real humans. I feel like Momoa's
going to get to that point too at some point. Now that he's in that Fast family,
I wonder because he seems like a dude that's just having a great time.
He seems to love to deconstruct what masculinity should look like.
That's true.
So I could see him not being like that. But if you go back and look at the male action stars, the iconic ones from like the 70s, a Stallone, a Burt Reynolds, like it wasn't a punch for punch count. It was they would get the kicked out of them for the first 80 minutes of the movie. Yeah. And then in the last 20 minutes, they would rally and win the day.
Yes.
And that's what made you care, right?
Yes,
like because,
the humanity
because
of
it felt like, is this guy going to be able to pull this off?
Everyone loves an underdog.
Yeah, the odds are stacked against him. Like, is he going to make it?
Who cares about invincible superhero? Not comic book, but these people that think they're Superman.
I mean, there's a place for that, and it can be fun, but to do it movie after movie, not
exactly.
so much.
But anyway, so back to this movie. So you've got Matthew Broderick and Laura Benetti, who are the parents of this movie. I haven't seen Matthew Broderick in a while. I think he kind of retired, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't
after he was doing Broadway, and then I don't think he
couldn't
really
tell you last
acted
time I saw him,
in many movies. But they play the parents who put out this ad, and this is the scene that even, I don't watch the trailers, but like I've been in the theaters, and
can't
this
avoid
is the
it.
one in the trailers. You know it when they're sitting down, and she's like, "Do you want me to date your son?" And they're like, "Yeah, date him. Date his brains out." It's that scene and everything. But
That's a good line, I thought.
Yeah, and I like his delivery. I think Matthew Broderick's really good, and Benanti is funny, and they're both good as the parents. It seems like they filmed for a day or two. Like they're always at the house, and they're like, I think they did change clothes. Okay, come back and do this scene. Like
Matthew Broderick was in Manchester by the Sea. I have zero recollection of that.
I don't remember.
I feel like he might have been in the beginning, like when. I don't remember either, or maybe he. Yeah, I mean, I think he's from the area. I think he's from Massachusetts.
So she's down in her luck. She's about to get fired from a bar job. She doesn't have a car. She goes through that zaniness, and she ends up catching wind. How does she find the ad? I don't even remember.
I think she's like looking to buy a car off Craigslist.
Oh, thank you.
It comes up.
Yeah, and so she's like that desperate. Where why not? And her friends. I thought her friends were really funny.
I like that conversation. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, but between like her friend and her friend's husband about like just like about their like autonomy and how like this is just kind of like what you like have to. It's like she's like, I might as well just do this for the car.
It's a good conversation because that's Natalie Morales plays her friend Sarah, and her husband or fiance is Jim, played by Scott MacArthur, and they go through this too where it's like Jim's giving his opinion. They're like, shut up, Jim. Like you have it's that whole thing of a man trying to say like whether you can or can't do this. And like, you shut up. And they talk about it. And that's that good conversation where Jennifer Lawrence is like, I've done a lot more and haven't got a car. And she decides I'm going to do it. And you get a lot of really fun moments. Like she doesn't have a vehicle. So now she's rollerblading, and she's rollerblading uphill with all these cars.
That's
and
so
then
good.
they live on a big drive. And so she has to figure out how to rollerblade up it and pull herself up. And there's like gardeners watching her. And I just think there's a lot of really fun, quirky moments that are very realistic, right? It's not like, it's not Buster Keaton comedy, I mean, there's a lot of humor that I find that is organically placed throughout this film where it's like she's down on her luck, and if you were down on your luck, you're going to have to do these things, and it's funny, and I feel like we can laugh along with it because it's believable, and whether or not you've been in that exact situation, you're like, yep, that's just my luck, or she's down on her luck, and I think that there's something, and because she's so endearing and charming and everything, you're just like, you're rooting for her the whole time.
Yeah,
it doesn't make it as weird. She's like, she's got to do this. She's got to get her life together. But she has that sit-down conversation. So basically, the son is this, like you said, socially inept, socially awkward guy that he plays computer games online, doesn't have any friends, volunteers at the animal shelter because he doesn't have to interact with people.
Right.
And so she takes this agreement that basically, the date is in quotes.
Right.
It's
they like this kid is socially awkward and he doesn't leave his room, and they want him to come out of his shell so he doesn't go off to college completely unworldly.
Yeah. And and you have those other, pretty funny moments, I thought, where she's like, are you sure he's not gay? And they're like, no, we've seen his search history. They're like there's funny little moments like that. And then that other line where he's like, well, sometimes like there's big groups or something.
Well, I mean, there's some mixed in, but yeah.
But these helicopter parents monitor everything. They've got the tracking device on his phone and the search history and everything. They know every move this kid's doing. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is a commentary on. I mean, they touch on all this stuff about feminism and bodily autonomy and
that might be part of the problem I have with the movie, is just that it's trying to do too many things.
That's true, because
like between the helicopter parents and the feminist stuff and the gentrification and there's a lot to unpack.
Unfocused a little bit because it does all these things, and even though I think it does them well, there's only so much stuff you can bounce around to in a tight comedy to where you're not going to be like, okay, this is a lot to follow. But so I like the premise of it. I do think that it's very funny and endearing, and it did not come off as icky to me, as the producers and directors said. They're like, you're not gonna. It's not. We worked really hard to not make it feel icky, and even though it's a little bit weird because especially being 2023 and all the stuff that people are always yelling at us about,
Yeah, but what I find interesting is that like their interactions, she's really trying to like seduce him, and it's very funny to like watch her like kind of like slink around and
Yeah.
really come on to him
Oh my
aggressively. But
gosh.
then like
Yeah.
he doesn't. It's like he actually wants to like it like doesn't work. Like
Well,
I feel like it's like he wants to actually get to know her and like she's like surprised by that because I think she expected that he'd be some like sex crazed virgin who would just like leap at the chance. And I like that it kind of plays with the expectations of like maybe he actually doesn't need to like have sex to come out of his shell. Like, it actually just needs someone just to like listen to him and talk to him. And I kind of noticed that like they don't really show him with his parents at all, except for at the end.
That's what
And
I'm saying.
like,
I was watching the
they
movie and I
actually
go,
took
oh,
him out and like showed him the world or like actually spend time with him, they would see that he doesn't really need to like date a girl to come out of the shell. He just needs someone to just like be his friend and to like help him out.
I was thinking the same thing, and I was like, well, it's because they filmed for 2 days, but
yeah.
but like I'm like, once they were gone and we're an hour into the movie and we haven't seen them again, I'm like, oh, they're like not a part of this movie.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you mentioned that, Manish, because that's another reason why I think this film does subvert expectations and is elevated, because in any other of these sex comedies, and especially because they revolve around men, you see someone that looks like Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, she looks great. And you see her coming at you in that red dress. That scene was hilarious. Her physical comedy that she plays up at the dog adoption place, the rescue place. Oh my gosh, she is hilarious. And you see someone like that coming at you, and you're a teenage guy, like, what's the stereotypical thing? He's going to be all over that. But he's not looking for the quick hookup. He wants a relationship. And so I think subverting that was actually really interesting.
I also think most teenage guys would not know what to do with that. Even if it was put on a silver platter like that, they would be like, what?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But and which I think makes this more believable
for
too.
Sure.
But I just like that in this sex comedy, the guy, the woman is the one trying to do the more raunchy stuff, and the guy is the one like wine and dine me.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, and all those points that Manish, when you're in the bathroom, but he was mentioning some of that stuff where it's like, yes, that's spot on. Is that like this guy? That's not what he needs. And
well, it's interesting to watch personally because I have a son that's this age who's shipping off to school.
God, Brian could have played this role.
Were
you thinking? I was looking
that's
at this
all
kid.
I could think
because he looks like Brian.
Yeah,
and Brian is an actor. And I'm like, dude.
My son is going to a conservatory acting school in the fall in Connecticut, and all I could think is if they had made this movie 18 months from now. Right. I think my son legit would have
been auditioning
could
for
have
this
been in the hunt for this role.
Absolutely.
Because like this guy looks like him, he acts like him, like it's like he has.
I'm glad you agree, and I didn't want to be offensive by saying it.
No.
I mean, Brian's great, but like it's just he reminded me
for sure. Like when I saw the trailer months ago, I sent it to my wife and I was like, oh my God, this is the movie Brian should be making. Like this is right up his alley. But also, like, I mean, like Brian's not as socially awkward as this kid, but he's got his moments, and
but he can act. So but it wasn't that so much as like just the look.
But I just meant that like I also relate to it as a parent in terms of like. There are times when I'm like, oh my God, we're sending him half a country away. And like, he just tried to boil water and forgot the water. Like that is a true thing that just happened 3 days ago.
And that's the kid in this movie, right?
Yeah.
They show that at the end. I do love that scene with the bags and like,
oh my God, it's so relatable
ahead,
because that happens to me all the time.
Yes, but it does. There's things like that where it's like, and especially when you're being watched. I don't know. I get that way. If I'm being watched do something and he's like trying to rearrange the bags and I love how they hang on it. I love how he keeps messing it up. And the parents are like, oh my God, what you just said they're doing, which is so relatable for any parent of a teenager. I do the same. My son's about to be 14, but he does things where I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They all do it, right?
My wife gets so freaked out by it. And I was like, look, man, like necessity is the mother of invention. Like you're going to push him out and like he's either going to figure it out or he's not. But if you don't, he for sure won't. Right?
100%, which is the moral of this movie.
And for all his weird flighty stuff, like it also calms her down to talk to my sister because she's just like, well, that's what your husband was like he I mean like half the stuff he does I was like I did that like
they grow out of it.
some times.
But
some of it I've grown out of.
Yeah, but the point is, if you're never given the chance, if you are babied, which is ultimately, again, the entire point of this movie, the main message here is the helicopter parent thing and letting your kid fly on his own. And that is what the movie is trying to say. And obviously going about it this way is the most ridiculous and not the right way to do it. But that's where the comedy comes from. And you're not supposed to, again, you're not supposed to go, the lesson you are not supposed to take is, oh yeah, every kid should have this done. The whole movie is about how bad of an idea this is.
You shouldn't have let your kid get to this place in the first place. That's the lesson of it.
I think ultimately, I feel like Percy is kind of a great kid. Like, he's very polite.
Yes.
He's is able to at least he's working. I mean, he's volunteering at a shelter, and so he's doing that for 8 hours. He seems to have a friend there, and when he it seems like his friends like him, or his classmates like him because he's at that party, and it's just I mean, who knows? I know there's the whole bullying thing. That's something that I was a little confused by, because that girl that he meets at the restaurant, she seemed to know him and like him, and was yeah, you got to come to this party. And I was I thought no one liked him at his school. I thought something that was a little
but I will say, I see this with my son. He would be in plays and stuff at school, and he would be kind of no, I really don't have a lot of friends at school. And then we would walk on campus with him, and everybody would be like, Brian, it's Brian. And I'm just what are you talking about? You don't have friends. You're practically signing autographs for people. I don't understand what's going on. So some of that, I do think that both of those things can be true. But I also feel maybe that's a newer phenomenon that I don't know how old. You just said you're the same age as Jennifer Lawrence.
I'm 34, so I'm still older.
Yeah, and so I don't know if maybe that's a recent development, because I think
so, because when I was in high school, I was definitely more shy and introverted and socially I just kept to myself a lot, and then it definitely did feel it took me in college to really come out of my shell and become more confident. In high school, it definitely was not. So, but I feel now, it's much easier for kids to also make relationships online, through social media, and even people in their own peer group that they see every day. But it's it's easier to cultivate that online and then take it in person than to just be put into high school and be okay, make friends.
Yeah. And it's so weird, because we were my wife and I talk about this all the time. These kids don't hang out in real life. It's so weird. My son recently had his graduation party. Kevin, you dropped by for a little bit, and all of those kids, there were a lot of kids at that party, right?
Yeah.
And
you had to order pizza twice.
We had to order pizza twice. Wow. That's how many kids were at the party. Without hyperbole, not one of those kids had ever set foot in our home before that party.
Yeah.
And I'm just you have all these friends. Why have we never seen them?
It's they just don't hang out that way.
They don't hang out. Kids don't hang out in real life today. It's so weird, but I also would think if I had all the technology available at that age, I don't know that I'd have been any different. But it's an alien concept.
Well, as good as Jennifer Lawrence is, I do think we need to talk about Andrew Barth Feldman, who is a fairly new actor. I haven't seen him. I don't remember him in anything before. He has a few credits, but he plays Percy, and I think he's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, he's really good.
I thought he was so good in this, because he has to play the vulnerable kid who's dealing with all this stuff. He's dealing with the helicopter parents, dealing with some really sad moments when he's talking about being bullied, and these kids started a rumor that I still need to sleep in the same room as my parents, and then that morphed into I slept in the same bed, and then I have sex with them. It's a really vulnerable moment,
right?
And how mean kids can be, and it was heartbreaking with him recounting this story about why he has no friends. And so I think he did a great job with the dramatic stuff, but also playing the straight man against Jennifer Lawrence's antics.
Right.
I thought he did a really great job and was really funny, and you could see him kind of coming out of his shell. And the thing that the script does have going for it, aside from I think some very funny moments and lines, but you do see him growing. The more he hangs out with Jennifer Lawrence, the more confidence he gains, and he starts making some little jokes and some funny quips, and I like seeing that character growth. But I think he handles it very well, from the very awkward, very naive to when he he grows up real fast throughout the course of this relationship.
I will say I felt like he grew up a little too fast. I almost feel like maybe they cut a scene, because once he figures out that she's working with the parents, that scene at the breakfast table, he instantly flips and becomes super smart and super mature and
Sure.
knows kind of how
Yeah.
to comport himself and get revenge.
That's you want this to be 90 minutes or 2.5
For
hours. You know
sure.
what I mean? That's
Yeah.
totally, I mean, it's
But
a
then
fair
even his plan to like get revenge on the car, I feel like it
backfires
goes out
and
of control for
yeah.
him. Like I don't think he meant for like that much damage.
No,
So I thought
he didn't,
It's like he's still a
certainly.
kid, but like yeah, he definitely has like. I do agree that there was a lot happened in that like hour.
I
Yeah.
feel like there's and again, I'm not complaining that they cut it down, but I definitely feel like there's a much longer version of this movie
Sure.
somewhere.
Yeah.
There were a couple scenes that I felt like started practically mid-sentence, like the
Yeah.
scene on the beach after the laser tag. There's also a scene where they do a montage later, and you get a quick moment of Jennifer Lawrence smoking weed on the beach, and I'm like, that feels like a longer scene that they just used the footage from for the montage, because like, why would you insert a scene of her smoking pot like
Well,
90
she did throughout the film.
She did? I didn't notice
In the
it.
very beginning, when she's there at the bar, all her friends are smoking weed, talking to each other. It's just there. It's
Oh,
just,
I totally missed
yeah.
that.
So
Okay,
they
then
show her
I
doing
take
it
that back.
throughout the film.
Yes.
But that's also the thing, is that now in 2023, weed
It's
is
no
just a
different-
thing.
it's no
just
different than beer. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So now I do like that it's popping up in a way, because it's like, even in Missouri, even in this red state, it's legal recreationally. So
Yeah.
now I mean, if you don't see it in popular media, it's going to start feeling unrealistic. Because
Right.
it is a thing that people just do.
For sure.
Just like seeing a beer at a party.
Yeah.
It's like, that's going to be a thing. And it's no longer like, oh my God, they're illegally smoking weed. It's like,
Right.
no, they're just doing it. Just like they're drinking, they're smoking.
Yeah.
So I do like it inserted and never mentioned, because
Yeah.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to bring up, I think, probably definitely the most talked about sequence in the movie, which is when they go skinny dipping and
Oh.
those kids steal the clothes, and she comes out and fights them in the nude, like wrestles them to the ground. I thought
Hilarious.
one of the best. I think one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
It's just so unexpected.
Yes,
That
it's
she would
so
do that.
yes, that is one of the things. It's shocking, just because it's like you have this A-list Oscar-winning actors in a comedy going full frontal, and then like wrestling kids,
Yeah.
and not using a body double, and it not shying away, but
And talk
also
about
not
taking a punch. I mean, she
yeah.
let herself get
taking
beat
a
up
kick.
a bit.
Yeah, and it's not gratuitous either, because
Yeah.
it's filmed. It's in a very like
It's not trying to be sexy.
no, it's a very
Yeah.
raw, like, these kids stole our clothes. We're skinny dipping. I'm going to go get them back. And she goes and kicks their ass.
Yeah.
And she just, they have her clothes. She's naked. So I really like that. And that's another thing I think this
Well,
film.
it is kind of flipping the script, because for years in R-rated movies, it's like the female nudity was sexy and male nudity
It's funny.
was funny.
Funny.
Co-
Yeah,
covering
or, like,
your junk with a
gross.
garbage can lid or whatever,
Right.
or your hands. But that's another thing where, again, it's 2023. You see all these women doing protests and going topless and being like, why can men do it? Why can't women? Why can't Jennifer Lawrence in a funny scene be nude?
Right.
Men do it all the time, and it's acceptable.
And you know what I like about that sequence is that like it keeps going and like kind of deals with the consequences of that, and that like not the consequences, but like I feel like in a lesser movie it would just kind of end with the fight, and you don't really see how they like react to that happening. And so
When
he
she
like,
jumps
comes out,
back
and he's
into
like
the
scared of her. Yeah, she goes back in the water. He's like terrified. And then like when she drives away and he like jumps on, and like it keeps going, keeps escalating.
Good
And
callback
they do
too.
the
I
whole
mean,
I love
set that
the
up.
hood of the car sequences.
this is scary. You did this, like when he flips the script on her. But again, great point, Manish, because
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny when they do a hard cut to her swimming back in the water. Like she
She's like,
leaves
"Okay,
him.
let's go."
Yeah, she leaves him to go get the clothes back. You see them
She's on a mission.
Yeah, and then she leaves, kicks their ass, does that really, really funny scene, and then hard cut to the same camera angle to him back there, and he's like, "Did you just fight those kids?" He's like, "Oh, they just apologized." It sounded like screaming. She's like, "That's the apology," but she's like, "Okay, you want to hook up now?" And it's so funny to think that she keeps doing these kind of wacky things.
And non-sexy things. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're
Yeah.
not, unless you have a very specific fetish,
Right.
You're not watching that and getting a boner, right? Like, you're,
But for
you're
her
just
to-
like, what the hell did you just do, you
Yeah,
weirdo?
even her like attempts to like seduce him and stuff, like it's not like this like kind of like backlit, like 80s kind of fantasy thing. It's like very like jarring. I mean, the song Man Eater like comes to mind because like it's very aggressive and like almost scary in a funny way. But I
But
think
that
they
also
handle
shows-
all that really well.
That's one of the things that shows how dumb he is.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even saying it like, oh, when I was 5, I thought this. He's like, he really thinks the song Man-Eater is about a monster. He did, and he still does.
Well, I also say, like, I've had songs like that I like don't pay that much attention to, and so it's like, oh, I think it's about that, and then like years later, I circle back around. I'm like, oh wait.
I mean, sure, we all do. Lyrics go over our head all the time. I still today am discovering songs from when I was a teenager, and I'm like, oh, I never heard that. But I'm just saying, like, I think that was in the script specifically to show you how he's not that bright of a kid.
Yeah.
And I think they used it for the character. But that was just one that came to mind. But I like the use of the song. I do think that they are describing Jennifer Lawrence. I think it's great the way that that song follows her character. And then also comes around for one of the sweetest moments of the entire movie. Where she like starts really caring about him. And it's not even like a falling in love thing, but she realizes like, this is a good kid. Like, I cannot believe how talented he is. And he's down on himself. And
that shows you, like, in the hands of a lesser actress, if this had been an Amy Schumer vehicle, let's say, and I like Amy Schumer, but she's not Oscar-winning actress. The funny parts might have been funnier with Amy Schumer, but I don't think she could have pulled off the restaurant scene when he's playing Man-Eater, because, like, you have to, like, dial it in to just the exact like ratio when she's looking at him, or otherwise you'll think she's falling in love with him, right? And that's never where this movie's going. And not for 1 minute did I think that that's where this movie
not
was
for
going.
a second do you ever go, oh, it's going to work out for them.
Right.
She just realizes, like, this is wrong. This is a good kid, and I can't do this to him because he's falling in love with me.
Yeah, I'm going to do damage to this.
So this movie is way more complex. In a lesser director, a lesser writer. I mean, even though I know you said there's some direction problems, but still, like, this guy wrote and directed this movie. I do think that
it's the broad comedy that I feel like he couldn't stick the landing on. The other parts,
the heart of the movie and the heart and soul of the movie, it really comes through. And I think that's what makes this movie so enjoyable, is that you really do feel for the characters. You really like Jennifer Lawrence in the beginning, and this kid, even though he may be kind of fly-deer or whatever, by the end you're just like, God, yeah, this is a good kid. He's a good person, and you want them both to succeed separately, but you do want them both to succeed, and that's the script making you like both these people.
Yeah, I guess let's get to the end of the movie where, you know, he figures out what's going on, and
I thought this was really clever. This was actually really clever, that he's like, basically what he's starting to fall in love with Jennifer Lawrence, and, you know, and she's like kind of like pumping the brakes. She's like, oh man, this is not going to be good. But he is like, I'm not going to Princeton anymore because I'll be too far from my girlfriend.
Right.
And they're like,
I mean, he's full of it.
Crap.
He's just doing it to yank a knot in his parents' tail.
No, he's totally means it. This is before
I
he
think
knows.
He means it when he says that.
This is before he knows. That's right.
And this is where the parents go, holy crap, this is completely, again, moral of the story, that's why you don't do stuff like this, because it's a horrible idea. But now, just because they wanted their son to come out of his shell, he's going to upend his entire life for an orchestrated fake relationship.
Right.
And so they're like, go sit in the car. We need to have a talk. And they're like, call her. And they get her on the phone. And she's like, hey, I can't do this. I can't go through with it, because she starts to care about him as a person. And they're like, hey, you can have the car. You don't need to sleep with him. That's fine. But you need to convince him now to go to school because he wants to stay for you.
Right.
And so he's going to wait in the car for his dad to drive him to the animal shelter or whatever. And he's playing with the radio just like any kid would do, trying to find music, whatever. He hits Bluetooth, and because the phone is close enough in the house, it switches the call over.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it just auto connects to the Bluetooth, but yeah, because my phone does that to the car every time. Every time Brian drives to work in the car, it, like, if I'm in the basement working out, I'm like, it stops my podcast until he's out of the driveway.
Yeah.
So
like, the technology works, which is something usually in movies the technology doesn't really
like,
work.
There's a lot to like in this scene. One, I like the use of technology, because normally, I think what you're trying to say, let me put words in your mouth.
Please.
Let me mansplain to another man.
Please.
Is that normally in a movie they have to write around technology.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, well, they could just make a phone call. Oh, we have to come up with a plot device for why they don't have cell coverage, right?
Yeah.
Where instead of writing around technology, it's the technology that's moving the story forward, not removing technology from the equation in order to prevent the story from moving forward. And so that all made a lot of sense. This scene also, I think, is really good about, it kind of acquits the parents of a lot of negativity, right? That in terms of, like, when she's like, I don't have to have sex with him anymore. And they were like, that was never really that. We just thought that was the magic bullet, but like you got him there. We don't care how. Like, you know what I mean? They really, at the end of the day, they weren't being pervy.
Yeah.
They just thought
anything they could do to get this kid out of his
that's the
shell.
line in the sand. If you have sex, then that will make you an adult, like it's a magic bullet. And when it's
I would
not.
say one thing that made me really, I don't know if this was like intentional or not, but really find these parents to be very underhanded is how like when they transfer the title of the car to her right before he like destroys it, right? And then like I was thinking, I'm like, man, they're gonna just dump this car on her and make her pay for all the repairs.
Yeah,
yeah, like
you know,
why they're rich and like and it's not her fault that the tree landed on it. Like they couldn't even get it fixed and give it to her.
Like, I was like, these guys seem like a little very underhanded to me. That I'm like, they just like kind of left her with this problem.
Yeah,
I thought that we would have at least gotten a line of dialogue that like the parents paid to fix the car. Back up.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That was a little
because
bit.
she accomplished their goal.
Yeah.
So now this kid is on the warpath, and this is where he grows up real quick. You know, through all the stuff they've been through, and it was a progressively, you know, character growth throughout the film. But now that he knows he's out for war, he's out for blood, so he invites her over when they're having dinner, and she shows up unannounced to the parents, and he just starts acting like a big jerk,
right?
You know, and that's when he leaves to go destroy the car, right? He calls his friend from the animal shelter over, and at first it's funny because he's like hitting it and it seems like it's doing no damage, and then he ends up putting a brick on the wheel and running it into a tree, and then a huge branch crashes down and like destroys the whole car.
Yeah,
but he comes back in, and you're like, and I can't remember if he like walks to his, I think he goes to the bedroom, and then she goes chases after him
because that's where they almost have sex but don't.
Yeah. And I like that. I'm like, oh, please don't make them hook up. Like they need to not. And you know, it's close. You know, he ends up getting off like she's like, that was my like
he gets on top of her. He ejaculates very, very quickly because he's a 19-year-old boy who's never had sex. But
they're very clear to say. Like,
but then she's like, that was my thighs.
My thighs, yeah, exactly. So like,
and even like, it's not even this like romantic or like it's not this like empowering like, oh, I like you know what I mean? Like it's like this awkward. It's like
perfunctory.
Weird. It's like like. There's something sexy about it, which is another way that they subvert.
It's not perfunctory.
Kind of comedy.
It's perfunctory.
The other thing is too, at this point, she doesn't want to do it. She is totally at the point like, this kid is falling in love with me, and he's a good kid, and I don't want to hurt him, and this is wrong. And so at this point, she doesn't want to. And then he's mad, and he's like, you don't want to have sex? Isn't that the whole point?
You owe me this. This is the deal you signed up for.
Well, well, and he knows it before he even reveals, before he shows his hand. He's like, well, have you been trying to do this the whole time? And then she's like, okay, yeah, I will. And she kind of goes along with it. That happens, and then he just puts it on Front Street.
Right.
That he knows. And she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, blah, blah, blah. And so they have this big kind of breakup moment, and she goes about her business, gets Gary, the tow truck driver, drops off the broken car at her house. And she's just like, what am I going to do? And they drop this broken car, and he's like, hey, it's American made. No one said it won't run.
Right.
And so this is a really quick montage. Like, this was a little bit of a like, wrap it up, much like this podcast, like wrap it up right at the end. And, all of a sudden, like, she was Ubering and working before.
Right.
I didn't take it as she was lazy. Now, even with her busted car, she just can make $20,000.
I know. Like this.
It's way too wrap it up. It's too much of a bow. But, like, after a 2-minute montage, she has $22,000 or $25,000. She pays off the lien on the house, and then she also decides, like, you know what? I've been and there's this weird plot thread with the dad that abandoned her. Her dad came to town, much like these other families, hooked up with her mom, but had a family of his own, so abandoned them, didn't want anything to do with her.
Paid him off with his house.
Gave the mom the money to get this house in the first place, and she wrote a letter that got returned, and there's this whole thread that never really gets followed up.
I thought for a minute they were going to say Matthew Broderick was the dad, and I was like,
my God.
gross.
I turned to Brad and I go, I hope he's not the dad. 'Cause she wouldn't have ever met him. She wouldn't have known.
Right.
I really thought they were doing it. But again, like, this is a 3-hour movie to get into that.
Right.
But it never really goes
Plus,
anywhere.
that means she's doing all that with her half brother.
Well, it is, but that's why I was like, well, maybe especially they won't ever hook up because, I thought it was going to play into. I really, I was thinking of the best romantic comedy of the past 10 years, Crazy Stupid Love. I thought it was going to be a showdown moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's my dad, right? And I thought it was going to turn into a whole.
And then 500 Days of Summer guy, but that might be over 10 now.
Yeah.
But anyway,
It's good.
It's still really good.
But I thought it was going to be that showdown, which that movie's masterful in the way that everything unfolds. And I guess I thought they were going there. But
I have to say though, I'm kind of glad because like I thought that she was gonna like meet him, you know,
Yeah.
or something, and then like have like him be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me like help you with your like financial troubles." And I'm kind of glad though because like Percy gets a line of like, "You also have a rich father who can like save you, but you're not gonna talk to him or whatever." And so I'm kind of glad that she didn't have that. Like she does have that safety net, but she doesn't really use it because
Yeah.
it's like now she can like solve her own problems by like work like by herself and like
That's a
through her
great
own
point.
means instead of just like instead of some kind of like Deus Ex Machina that saves her in the end.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of
But
glad
it's just-
that like it doesn't go anywhere because I feel like it's stronger for her character to do this on her own.
I 100% agree, but I also think they didn't need to introduce that plot thread. They
Yeah,
didn't
that's
follow
true.
it at
It
all.
didn't accomplish much other than him having something kind of to say.
Yeah, and then her
Yeah, yeah.
agency at the end, instead of like when she looks at the letter, I also thought, oh, I'm going to go talk to him. Something's going to happen, and she just burns it. So she does grow and get her own
and also when you
agency.
see the envelope, it says return to sender. No, he doesn't
didn't
live.
get it.
He didn't live there anymore. He didn't like. She positioned it as he sent it back to her, and it like.
But yeah, it's return to sender.
Like he didn't live there, and it came back.
And she never tried again.
That's a very different thing.
It is.
Yeah, she could have
So-
gone on Facebook.
Which I
Right.
also think, but that shows that it was of her own choice. Like in what he says to her, you didn't try. You really
Right.
aren't, you know. So anyway, she ends up doing it on her own. She raises all the money, but she realizes, and through the growth of her character, and by the end, in burning the letter, she's like, you know what? I never left because I was so attached to this and was afraid of everything. And so now she is going to finally leave. She sells the house. There's a couple of comedians in this. There's Doug Mooney, which is kind of fun with his old babysitter. The name switch thing I thought was hilarious.
that was
Jody.
Good.
That was a really good scene, especially when he's treating the kid like a puppy.
Yeah. Oh, go get this. He's like, it landed in a thorn bush, but I got it out. I thought he was going to do it again.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really funny. We talked about my babysitter Jody, and it's Kyle Mooney, and then Hassan Minaj is the real estate agent, Doug Kahn from high school, you know, and he just pops in to sell her house, and you never see him again. He calls on the phone, but they introduced that, you know, Chekhov's real estate agent. That's a thing, and so she essentially ends up selling the house, but she sells it way under value to her two friends from the beginning that are about to have a kid, and the only reason they can't stay is because they can't afford to raise a child in this expensive area.
Right.
So she gives them a really good deal on the house. She has enough money now to be fine and to move away and to really start her life off at this point.
And then it ends with her driving the kid off to college, which I like. Especially they do a really good job of like, you know, that there is not that they are friends, that there's nothing. There's no like hope that maybe they'll fall. Like it's like no, that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah, she's a Uber driver, which I really liked. And you know, she shows up at the mixer though, where he wants nothing to do. He's at the Princeton mixer.
Yeah,
and this is where she kind of has her big like apology type thing. And you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, they drive off, and it's very funny. It's a fun friendship. She's got her whole life ahead of her. He's got his life ahead of him, and they've both learned things out of a terrible situation. They grew and they learned a lot, and I think that's why ultimately this movie succeeds, is that there's a lot to take away from it, and I think the message is good, and it just happens to be wrapped in this funny sex comedy thing, but
I think
it's
largely it
handled
works.
well.
I think it could have been funnier, but like I said, it's not the performances or the script that was the problem for me. I just felt like it could have been structured in a way that was punchier.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it. I did not hate this movie by any stretch of the imagination. It just felt like a missed opportunity. It could have been like next level good.
I missed this type of movie.
Yeah,
and
for
I
sure.
like how it's not even like I'm not saying I'm pining for the days of American Pie. Like you can't make that
No.
movie anymore.
No.
But look,
Nor should you.
Yeah, or Sex Drive with Clark Duke, you know.
Right.
Like you can't
Man,
make
even going back and watching Stripes now, I'm just like, oof.
I know.
Like I love Bill Murray, but I watched that and I'm like, this guy's a dick. Like
Meatballs for me.
Yeah.
That movie
But I
grossed
think
me
this
out.
movie proves that you can do that type of movie in a way that, I mean, who knows how this movie will age in 30 years? You know, who knows?
But for now, it's exactly
like,
what I'm
it
saying.
feels relevant, it feels modern, it feels fresh, but it also feels like a good throwback to kind of like we need more comedies in theaters, like
For sure.
especially some with a star like Jennifer Lawrence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I miss the movies that we can't make anymore, nor should they probably in this climate. But this accomplished giving you a sex comedy, but doing it through a modern lens, and it was effective. And so
It was refreshing tempting to be like, oh, I can just leave. I don't have to wait for an end credit scene.
I know, right?
I
It was
checked. I'm
funny.
going to tell you, I
not
checked.
sure.
It's funny. When the credits started, I was like, "We can go." It's not that kind of movie, but no one else was leaving, and I was like, "God, Marvel has so trained people."
I looked it up. Well, because even Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I
they
mean,
did have like
I thought there was
going
gonna
to
be.
Yeah.
They could have done a
funny
Ferris.
scene. Yeah.
Why did they not have Matthew Broderick go? You're still here. Like, come on, that is a
Especially when
missed.
they backed a car into a tree.
Well, I think that was another one. Yeah, they should have.
Yeah.
But overall, I did enjoy this. So I guess let's go around the table and everyone can say where to find them.
This is Kevin. Follow me on Twitter at KevinRBrackett.
And Manish, where can they find you and your wares?
You can find me on Twitter at Vertigay314. That's VERTIGAY314. Also, my podcast, It Pod to Be You, which is on all podcast platforms. Both of you have been on it.
We have.
in the last year or so. So
I did
those
Licorice
were
Pizza.
Licorice Pizza and My Fair Lady. So look out for those episodes as well.
Oh boy, so you did Licorice Pizza and
I know.
then this movie with Manish.
I
You two
only
are on
do-
a roll.
I know. I only do the awkward, inappropriate sex
Now,
age
now
difference.
that one he was underage.
Yeah.
which gets
but
a little
I'm
bit.
trying to
more-
remember. They don't do it either, though, do they?
No, that movie's not. There's no romance in that. I mean, there is a romance in the movie, but it's not like they're dating or
Right, but
It's
yeah.
funny that you guys
People
both
Yeah, that's
get
true.
really weird about that stuff
They
now.
do,
So
yeah.
which is ultimately it's better that they get weird about it than they don't. But I also
but it's
think
that overreaction. Like
Yeah.
we need to come to a point where you can't be offended about everything, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to comedy.
For sure.
You know, so there's we're in a bit of this polarizing. You know, it's
But
I just want to say that I've been listening to you guys since 2017, and I think one of the first, if not the first episode I listened to was The Passengers with Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh,
So
it's funny.
it's kind of a fun full circle moment.
and another one about
Another one with some weird sex stuff going on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening.
Absolutely,
And for
thank
now,
you.
coming on the
thank
show
you.
as a
Thanks
guest.
for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, and you can find me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe, and find the show online at facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group, and don't forget our Patreon. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Maude commits suicide.
Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, 'cause we